revelation.
Let's go.
Go ahead.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. It is Friday, August 1st. Welcome to the second half of the summer. All right, so coming up today, unexpectedly, the day after Kamala Harris said she wasn't running for governor of California, we thought we were, done with Kamala Harris and that she was going to fade away. But no, wait. She's got a fucking book that she's going to use as a springboard for a 2028 presidential run. And she emerges with new speaking skills. She's obviously gone into a 6-month training exercise with some experts from intelligence, as did Barack Obama and people like AOC, AOC, first of all, was a bartender who just kind of burst onto the scene again after disappearing for a short amount of time and emerging with these great social skills. In any case, what else we're going to be covering today is Trump is taking on Big Pharma. So all you people that label Trump as a fascist, how does a president that takes on corporate fascism, how is he then a fascist? We don't really know. So in the next hour or so, we're going to go over 30 or so headlines or more. So I got something to do, so we're going to try to stick to an hour today. Hopefully we're going to be done by 11 o'clock. So let's get started. All right, we're going to start off with just the news today. And this is also big breaking news. After alleged Clinton-Russia ruse was intercepted by U.S. intel, Biden took first shot at smearing Trump. Now, if you understand the conspiracy, there are different cells within different circles within the conspiracy that are somewhat insulated, and no one really knows what's going on in the center of the spider's web, so to speak. Like the DNC is one big conspiracy. The Democrat political machine is one big conspiracy, but that is in a greater web of conspiracy as socialism. And so this has to do with the Democratic political machine, that conspiracy. And let's go to the story. Then Vice President Joe Biden was the first major Democrat in the summer of 2016 to publicly try to link Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin after U.S. intelligence intercepted a purported plan by Hillary Clinton and her campaign to vilify Trump by falsely linking him to a Russian plot. Now, what we've recently understood from the documents released by Tulsi Gabbard was that Russia actually was building op research on Hillary Clinton. They had found some stuff because they didn't really want to deal with her. She had threatened Russia in the past with war. And of course, it was a Benghazi thing, but the no-fly zone in Syria was a big sticking point, but I'm not going to digress too much into that. But according to the intel brief, the U.S. intelligence had intercepted the Russians talking about several problems with Hillary Clinton, and they were going to release it. So just supposedly. So their justification, John Brennan's justification, is now that the reason they cooked up this Russia and Trump plot was because they were worried about Russia coming out with this damning opposition research on Hillary Clinton or giving it to the Trump campaign or something. Now, if you listen to some of the things that Russia was coming out with, it doesn't seem completely implausible because some of the things about Hillary Clinton could be true. All right, but going back to Biden, let's get back to the story. The timing of Biden's Russia attacks against Trump in July 2016 was striking to U.S. intelligence because it and other events match predictions in the intercepted evidence from Russian spy agencies, which had claimed to have gained access to Clinton campaign strategy. Well, there you go. They had some strategy. So everybody was sort of in on what was happening, except the American public. And this is where the dupe begins, with the aid of the mainstream media, of course, U.S. intelligence, and the Clinton campaign. All right, so I'm going to go through a bunch of Federalist articles now before we get to the juice on Kamala Harris, which isn't really juicy. Just this is more juicy, and that's why I led with this, than the Kamala Harris stuff. But the Kamala Harris stuff is important to visualize past the midterms into 2028. Because the Democrats need a leader of the party, so she's the de facto leader since she was the nominee, and so we'll see what happens here. All right, let's go to the Federalist. So documents show Soros executive predicted FBI would put more oil into the fire of the Russia hoax. So what we're talking about here is what we already know from the documents, is that the villainous Open Society Foundation and all their operatives, including George Soros himself to some degree, were involved in the conspiracy. This is the Democratic political machine conspiracy, as I said in the beginning. So who's involved in this? Well, you have some segments of the intelligence agency conspiracy, which is sort of the Democratic political machine conspiracy, but not really. As I stated previously, the intelligence agencies are actually right below the corporate elite leadership conspiracy. They own the intelligence agencies, which get dirt on politicians, which then control and manipulate the U.S. government, etc. And then the U.S. government is actually below the strata of corporations, etc., etc. And then governments, and then the government minions, political players, etc., and then military, other NGOs, stuff like that, and then down to the bottom where the you and I, the plebes, are. So we know that Soros Open Society Foundation was involved in the Democratic political machine conspiracy, which had elicited help from the intelligence agencies, the FBI. And we know they're going to put more oil on the fire, which basically means they're going to help grow the idea of this conspiracy hoax, really, of Trump and Russia. More from the Federalist. Again, from the document Trove, released, declassified by Tulsi Gabbard. Russia had intel that Obama was protecting Hillary from email investigation. Well, this is what I talked about earlier, where the Russians had a lot of different stuff on Hillary Clinton, stuff they didn't necessarily like. And they had started building their espionage portfolio on Hillary Clinton probably around the time that she started threatening a no-fly zone over Syria. Again, I'm not going to digress too much into that. So Russia has intel. Let's go to document, or the text from the story. Newly declassified documents show Russia had intelligence on then President Barack Obama and was trying to make Hillary Clinton's email scandal go away to the lead up of the 2016 election. So what they're saying here is Obama was trying to help Hillary Clinton by getting her email scandal to go away, which it did. Let's get back to the story. Senate Judiciary Chuck Grassley released on Thursday the declassified appendix to the special counsel John Durham's report, 2023 report, which have been reported on for some time. Excuse me. The Durham report vindicated President Donald Trump and others who insisted the FBI acted improperly when it opened its investigation into the Trump campaign over allegations of collusion with Russia. Notably, the special counsel Robert Mueller found no evidence that Trump conspired with Russian operatives. We know all this. The point is, the Durham special investigation was prompted to see if the Democrats and people within the FBI were acting improperly or unlawfully in regards to launching the Mueller investigation. I mean, this is the biggest part, so we need to understand that. More from the story. According to the declassified appendix, the Obama administration's intelligence agencies became aware of 2 Russian intelligence memos that assessed Obama himself was trying to tip the scales for Clinton based on spying they did on then chairwoman of Democratic National Committee, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I need to interject here because this was before her ouster for rigging the primary for Clinton after the Bernie bros had found out that the DNC had rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders, who actually won. And so she was ousted as then DNC chair. Back to the story. Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the conversations she purportedly had with 2 individuals from George Soros's Open Society Foundations. Obama didn't want to darken the final part of his presidency and legacy by the scandal surrounding Clinton, which involves the emails, etc., and more. So Obama put pressure on FBI Director James Comey through Attorney General Lynch. However, so far without concrete results, according to the memorandum. That is before, this memo is before, because I think it was a day before the 2016 election, or a week before, where Comey came out and obviously bent to the pressure of Obama and said, we're not going to prosecute Hillary Clinton for the leaking classified email information. I don't want to delve into that. But that's not the point. The heinous charge was destroying subpoenaed evidence in a federal case, in a federal probe. More from the documents from the Federalist. Clinton team denied knowledge of Russia hoax despite email saying she approved the plan. Despite the documents purportedly showing that Hillary Clinton personally approved the launch of the Russia collusion hoax, Clinton and members of her campaign told the FBI when they were interviewed that they had no knowledge of such a plan to link Trump and Russia. They purposely lied. Clinton told officials on July 2016 declassified sensitive intelligence material looked like Russian disinformation. Of course. Just like the Hunter Biden laptop. Everything's Russian disinformation. It's the Russians. But they've been planning this all for some time. I think that's what was behind the Netflix series, The Americans, which was about Soviet-era spying in the U.S., but in any case. While Clinton campaign chair John Podesta said the information was both new to him and ridiculous. Also, I say in the campaign had no involvement with the plan. Sure it did. And then, of course, they went on to say that it was Russia that hacked the DNC emails. And then there was a disinformation campaign where there was a leak of DC emails, which was something completely different. But, they tried to conflate the whole story. Actually, what happened was the John Podesta emails were part of a leak, presumably what we understand as being leaked by Seth Rich, who was a Bernie Sanders supporter who was upset because the DNC legally stole the nomination away from John Podesta, for Bernie Sanders. And then Sean Lucas summarily died, also a day after filing a lawsuit against the DNC for not reflecting the sentiment of the Democratic electorate who voted in the primary. And of course, the usual characters come out and say, Real Clear Politics, Brennan, professionals at DOJ will dismiss any of these referrals because they are baseless. All right, well, Brennan says, quote, professionals at the DOJ. So that's a euphemism when people say professionals. They mean deep staters, bureaucrats in there that they control. So he's admitting that still, from his position as a former CIA professional, that he's got people within the DOJ that are going to help push a dismissal of these referrals because they're baseless. But they're not baseless. We see the receipts. We know that there's a conspiracy. There always has been a conspiracy. Let's not let people think that there's not a conspiracy. The funny thing is that there are several different intertwining conspiracies, and that's the way conspiracies work. Conspiracies are compartmentalized, and a lot of times different conspiracies have the same objective, but that doesn't mean they're connected. Okay. Going back to the Federalist, exclusive. DOJ official who approved $2 million payout to disgraced Russia hoaxers identified as left-wing activist Brian Netter. This is interesting. FBI Special Agent Peter Strzok and his mistress, FBI lawyer Lisa Page, sued the Department of Justice over the release of messages detailing in their role of pushing the Clintons' campaign Russia collusion hoax. It was their insurance policy. It was the FBI will be pouring oil on the fire. That's what the Open Society Foundation was referring to, was this. They said the release of the messages that were written using government resources violated their privacy. It didn't, because it's using government resources means government phones, which if you're using a work computer or anything like that, that you're subject to surveillance and seizure of those communications. Because he wasn't writing his wife. He was writing his mistress, which could have been considered privacy if she didn't also work for the federal government, which she does. So it's office to office. The Biden administration rewarded the duo with lucrative payouts. Strzok received $1.2 million for, his testimony and taxpayer funds, while Page received an $800,000 settlement. So this is all payouts for toting the party line or sticking up for the establishment, basically. How this is, and this happens time and time again with book deals and stuff like that. People are rewarded for being loyal to the conspiracy. We have identified Brian Netter, Deputy Assistant Attorney General, as the individual that approved the settlement agreements. Now, I wonder if Brian Netter probably isn't still with the DOJ. I hope not. He might be one of the professionals Brennan is referring to. And there's more from the Federalist. Wikipedia. Locked, the Steele dossier page is laced with lies that only certain users can correct. 5 paragraphs into the detailed description of the document that fueled the Russia collusion hoax, the article claims a British spy, Christopher Steele's manufactured evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Moscow did not play any role in the January 6, 2017 intelligence community assessment of the Russian actions in the 2016 election. The problem here is that the Russian actions in the 2016 election were so minimal. 2 Facebook pages and some Facebook buy-ins. I mean, come on. The article even went so far as to deny that the Steele dossier was the trigger for opening the Russia investigation into whether the Trump campaign was coordinating with the Russian government's interference with the 2016 presidential election. And like I said many times before, the op research from the Clinton campaign that was then used by the FBI and falsified for the FISA warrants that were used to get dirt on Trump, but they didn't find any, so they had to go with the op research, which was the Steele dossier, that proved to have lots of holes in it and was denied by professionals in the intelligence community. I don't know why my stream is effing up. All right, let's move on, though. More news. Fox Business. Trump sends letters to 17 pharmaceutical companies on reducing drug prices. The fascist Donald Trump confronts big pharma CEOs over exorbitant pharmaceutical pricing in the letters to 17 companies. Well, this isn't very surprising, to be honest with you. I kind of redid my scene switchers, and now I don't remember which button goes to what. Yeah, so everybody wondered why that the pharmaceutical companies were charging extra or more for American consumers than anybody else. And it has to do also with part of the Medicaid fraud and all of that. So if your pharmaceuticals are subsidized by the government and there's a corporate fascist system going on, that you're taking money out of the fascist conglomerate, you're taking money out of one pocket and putting it into another. So it was kind of like a kickback, you could say, of sorts, to a kickback to the pharmaceutical companies. It has to be stopped. I think it's unlawful, to be honest with you, but it has to be stopped. I was overdriving the mic here, so. So Zero Hedge also has the article, Zero Hedge, Trump vows to use every tool in the arsenal to force big pharma to cut drug prices. So the letter went to some of these big pharma: AbbVie, Amgen, AstraZeneca, Boehringer, Ingelheim, Bristol Myers Squibb, Eli Lilly, EMD, Serono, Genentech, Gilead, GlaxoSmithKline, Johnson & Johnson, Merck, Novartis, Novo Nordisk, Pfizer, of course, Regeneron, and Sanofi. That would be neat to see. Trying to figure out what's dragging my stream here. And then moving on to other headlines. So that's a good thing. See, Trump's not a fascist. Would a corporate fascist really be trying to undermine the bottom line of corporations? I think an illegal theft from the American people, as far as bilking them for more money than they would charge to foreign governments, etc. And a lot of times foreign governments negotiate the price of pharmaceuticals because they have socialized medicine. But just because we don't have socialized medicine, that shouldn't mean we get penalized, should it? You know, it's not that I'm not a capitalist. I believe in capitalism, but you have to watch corporations. for monopolies and using their position in the market to, hold people hostage. More news. New York Times, White House unveils plan for $2,000 million ballroom, Trump's long-sought imprint. He's got a lot of imprint on the White House already, so it's not much to be said there. But officials say the 19,000 square foot addition in the East Wing would be paid for by President Trump and other donors. So, yeah, you see that here. That the left was lying, that, Chuck Schumer came out and said that it was being paid for by taxpayers. That was a lie, obviously. So, New York Times again. Trump administration updates. White House announces sweeping new tariffs for much of the world. So, on August 7th, tariff duties of 20% will be paid for by Sri Lanka, Taiwan. Higher rate, 15% will be Bolivia, Ecuador, Iceland, and Nigeria. 20% will be Sri Lanka and Taiwan. The highest rates appear to be those targeting Syria, Laos, Myanmar, 40 or 41%, as well as Brazil at 50%, because Syria is controlled by jihadis. Brazil is controlled by the communists. Laos, I think, is also controlled by the communists. And Myanmar is controlled by a military junta. So fuck them. Some of the trading partners in recent weeks, including Britain, Indonesia, the Philippines, Japan, South Korea, and European Union, have all struck deals. Good thing. Yeah, man. Good things. But there's more. Mexico's president agreed to pause any escalation in tariffs on Mexico for 90 days with the goal of signing a trade deal. So there's been a pause there. Trump did not mention the existing trade deal between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, which he updated and signed in his first term. That's the new MCA. Separately, top U.S. officials also met with their Chinese counterparts in Stockholm this week to discuss extending the trade truce that expires on August 12th. Chinese officials said afterward that they secured a 90-day extension on any tariff increase, while Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on CNBC on Thursday that extension was likely. Next headline, AP, Trump signs order imposing new tariffs on number of trading partners that goes into effect in 7 days. So I'm trying to clear up this issue here with, there shouldn't really be, there's no reason for any drag in here, so I don't know what's going on. All right, more headlines. Sorry about the delay. Just the news. Many Californians voiced support for Trump's homelessness executive order. If you didn't know anything about this, Californians are urging their governor, Gavin Newsom, to acknowledge the Trump administration's executive order on homelessness, believing it will help mitigate a state crisis. Indeed. The problem is that California, with its nice weather, everybody goes to California, even if they don't have a pot to piss in, and then without any pushback from the state, they just set up camp on the sidewalks, etc. The order represents a law and order approach. The homelessness that closely resembles Newsom approach, however, it upends housing first and harm reduction, two standard policies used in California. The order directs the administration to prioritize funding to state and local government to adopt its law and order approach, but withhold funding to places that don't, which means you gotta clear the streets for business, patrons, and citizens. And that's the law and order approach. And if you can't make the state, the area, or whatever conducive for business, nothing's going to work. So Californians are encouraging Newsom, who continued to celebrate his administration's approach on homelessness, to comply with the order to receive federal help. So Newsom has had some success, especially after the law, they did a tack in the law. They were very permissive, and then they said we need to be less permissive because it's making the problem worse. Even though they spent billions of dollars, especially in San Francisco, billions of dollars were spent for no result. And so when Democrats or liberals are caught spending billions, not even millions, for no result, even they have to change course. But they've already gotten the money, so they're like, well, I guess that didn't work. Let's try something else that you'll pay me for. More headlines from Zero Hedge. Speaking of corruption, Ukraine adopts new anti-corruption laws. Zelensky quickly reverses after purse strings are threatened. If you didn't know what was happening here, a stunning about-face by the same lawmakers who just last week had supported the previous law undermining the agencies. So if you didn't know anything about Ukraine, is that Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Their whole nature, I don't want to say society, but a lot of Slavic nations, and some people, I should say, not all. I'm not saying that Slavs are corrupt, but the way they look at corruption is much different. They don't look at it as a moral failing. You're trying to get yours to support your family and what have you. So, and especially places where there isn't a lot of capital flowing around, they just look at it as a course of doing business. But when the West wanted to invest in Ukraine, they had sweeping laws that had to be adopted for them to receive the IMF, all the funding that they needed to separate from Russia. And that's what the whole Burisma thing was about. And the dismissal of the prosecutor there was an anti-corruption prosecutor who was looking into Burisma, where Hunter Biden was sitting on the board and obviously was a corrupt practice. They didn't want them to get too close, so they fired the prosecutor, which was the whole basis of the West adopting Ukraine, and now they're doing it again. And the lawmakers had voted just last week to undermine corruption laws. And of course, the West and NATO came in and go, well, we're not going to support you anymore unless you try to fight corruption. And the corruption hasn't really abated, with billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars flowing from Western sources to Ukraine. And it's still, a lot of it's disappearing, and a lot of even the military equipment that's directly sent to Ukraine ends up on the black market. Oh, this is text from one of the Federalist articles. Yeah, it talks about a memo. I'm not going to go into this right now. We're going to go into the juicy juice, which is AP. Harris opens up about her historic presidential run after Biden exits in new memoir, 107 days. So former Vice President Kamala Harris will have a new memoir out in the fall on her historic presidential run. So this is platforming her run for 2028. Now, if you haven't seen her lately, just in the past few weeks, she's trotted herself out with I don't know if they're new rehearsed lines, but see, the CIA has this program. It's a neuro-linguistic programming thing. In any case, they teach you how to communicate properly and to communicate on two levels. addressing your constituents, your supporters, and your detractors and your opponents all in the same breath, while signaling to not your supporters, to your benefactors, what your true intent is. So you're communicating on a lot of different levels. But the first step for Kamala Harris was making her articulate, and using that articulation to make her seem cogent, at the very least, but intellectual, on her higher levels, building her up for the 2028 run. So I guarantee you will see a distinct contrast between Kamala Harris of old and the new Kamala Harris, which maybe even be a body double, or they switched her brains or something, who knows. That's not how they do it. They put you into intense psychotherapy programming where they give you hallucinogenic drugs or other pharmaceuticals, hook you up to a screen, and play that screen 24/7 until it's sort of like in The Matrix, if you saw The Matrix. When they hooked Neo up to a program and taught him things. Same principle, except you're actually looking at a screen with other sensory eliminated. So you're up to a screen and they hook you up and leave you there after giving you really they're psychoactive drugs that help you learn. You should also see the movie, the Bradley Cooper movie, Limitless, which also explains how these drugs work. Okay, back to the article. Just over a year ago, I launched my campaign for President of the United States, Harris said in a video announcement. Of course, one that could be edited. 107 days traveling the country, fighting for our future. I don't even know if I want to get into this any further. It's really stupid. But in any case, the point I'm trying to make is that we're not done with Kamala Harris. The donors of Kamala Harris's first term, who pumped $1 billion into her campaign, are going to put good money after bad. So they're going to invest more on top of their $1 billion to make sure that there's a payoff. The worst thing they want to do is put $1 million into Kamala Harris politically and then cast her off to the wayside, because then you're just wasting $1 billion. This way they could put tens of millions in and maybe reap some reward. All right, PJ Media has the headline, Democrats have a Kamala Harris problem now. Indeed they do. As I said, she's not going away. And if you didn't see the poll, she was the top earner for Democrat presidential candidates for 2028. She was on top, way ahead of everyone else. So that's another reason why they're going to pump more money into her. And she's going to be a lot more crafted than she was before. They didn't have time to prepare her. They never thought they were going to be put in this position, and they never thought there were going to be as much criticism. They thought they've always played their game with such success that they thought they could just shoehorn her in and no one would say anything. It was a fiasco. Let's go to the CIA itself. Kamala Harris tells Stephen Colbert, the U.S. democracy is broken. This is the Washington Post. Harris painted a dire picture of U.S. democracy. I have to interject here just a bit. The real threat to democracy has been the establishment that doesn't like democracy. They say it's like herding cats, but they talk about democracy and then they undermine it. So it's actually the establishment, the liberals, the deep state that are undermining democracy. And we see that through the Russia collusion hoax. Perfect example. Again, number two, Harris warned against trying to ride out Trump's presidency. So basically, they're telling everybody, you need to fight the presidency. You need to fight the agenda because then it's going to be more they're going to have to undo, and that's not what they want to do, is undo Trump's doings. And then more news. Biden judge blocks Trump from ending deportation amnesty for Honduras, Nicaragua, and Nepal. It wasn't amnesty. It was protective status for 60,000 illegal immigrants who were thought to be in danger if they were deported back to their home countries. Okay, Honduras, I don't understand that. And that's the majority of the 60,000 are Hondurans. There's no threat to Hondurans to return back to Honduras. Not that kind of government. Nicaragua is communist. So if you're anti-communist, there might be some retaliation from the state if you go back to Nicaragua. So Iowa's err with caution when you're deporting people back to communist countries like Venezuela or Cuba or Nicaragua or communist China. Not saying you can't. I'm just saying that, there's a problem. I don't know what's fucked. I got something fucked up with my stream today, it figures. Migrants from all three nations all had temporary protected status for at least a decade. Fuck temporary protected status. It was temporary. You remove it. Now it's not temporary anymore. You said it was temporary. So it was temporary. Now it's not permanent. But a Biden judge blocks it because he wants to make it permanent. Never fails. More news from One American News. Mississippi, 72 arrested, 29 human trafficking victims rescued in a 2-week operation. Congrats to Mississippi for doing that. Hopefully the feds were involved. I think they might have been. When they say human trafficking, they usually don't. They're not referring to child sex trafficking, although the adults may have been trafficked for sex. But a lot of times human trafficking has to do with it's sort of slavery in the sense is that what they do is you have people trafficked illegally, illegal immigrants into the United States, and then they're held by bounty. So like, we smuggled you into the United States. Now you need to go to work and pay off your $30,000 debt that keeps growing. So they're basically left in slavery under the traffickers. Sometimes they have to work it off in the sex trade. Other times it's different. That's what you love Chinese food. That's how the Chinese mafia, organized Chinese crime that actually works with the state. They get illegal immigrants here into the state, and then they have them work in Chinese restaurants or in other places to work off their debt. It's really quite terrible. I knew something fucked up was happening. My stream's still going? Yeah, fuck. Bear with me here. Yeah, it's time for a new computer. It's really not functioning enough. Hey, just some personal information here. Some notes while I start up this app. Subscribers have officially tied YouTube. So I had a boon on YouTube for a while. I thought I was going to break 270. I'm at 268. Now Rumble officially, I have 268 tying my YouTube subscribers. So congratulations, if there's any warranted whatsoever. Okay, we're moving on to the next story now. From the Post Millennial. Convicted child sexual predator arrested for rape of 12-year-old girl in Washington State. Solomon Abdul Hadi, 24, of Vancouver. That's Canada. So I don't understand, and I don't understand the Post Millennial reporting on this either. a Canadian national. Okay, and we talked about this yesterday with the southern border in Houston and child sex trafficking and stuff, is that because the United States is the center for child sex, child pornography, et cetera, is that people come here over the border and then they go back home to avoid arrest. Now, this guy is a serial child predator. He's of Vancouver and has been accused of giving alcohol to a 12-year-old girl before sexually assaulting her. Court records show that Abdul Hadi is a repeat criminal sex offender with charges and allegations dating back to 2016. When he was a juvenile during that year, he was accused of sexually assaulting a male student at St. John's Military School in Kansas. In 2020, Abdul Hadi was convicted in Washington State of communicating with a minor for the immoral purpose of third-degree rape of a child. Jesus. And then just recently on May 6th, Abdul Hadi pleaded guilty to failure to register as a sex offender and subsequently sentenced to 30 days in jail, 30 days of work crew, and 12 months of probation. He failed to inform his parole officer when he moved into his home on 143rd Avenue, resulting in an online sex offender registry. Maybe it's Vancouver, Washington. I'm sorry. Not British Columbia. My bad. In any case, sexual predator that was not dutifully kept from the public or kept from victims. So he continued to repeat offend regardless. And if you know anything about child sex offenders, there's no recourse. And even some sex offenders request to be castrated because they never lose the urge to rape children. That's something that should be considered. Maybe they should receive hormone therapy instead of transgender people. All right, we got a few minutes left. Let's go to the New York Post. Everything we don't know about Jeffrey Epstein's death and all the things that don't add up. Of course, I mean, this isn't, most of you know all this stuff. The newly released video, what's missing. I mean, there's 3 minutes missing from the footage. I mean, come on, it adds up to a crock of shit is what it adds up to. And I think, I don't know, I'm just speculating that they brought back Nick Taglione to murder him again. And if you look, you'll see some of the footage here. You'll look at the strangulation marks. It looks like a cord was wrapped around his neck. Probably the cord from the CPAP machine. Let me show you the pictures and you'll see that it doesn't look like a sheet. A sheet doesn't have the tight ligature marks. You'll see. Epstein's body was found. Apparently there were 2 orange nooses made out of bed sheets. Okay. Despite being clearly dead, Michael Thomas, one of the guards that was sleeping when found him, attempted CPR. Breathe, Epstein, breathe, is the thing that's been quoted. He could have very well been strangling him at the time. Who knows? I always thought that was a joke. You're in there strangling the guy. Breathe, Epstein, breathe, as you choke him out. Then the hospital dash where they provided CPR for him again. Ligature. What is the word? Still sticking in my head. And here's the photo of him going out on the stretcher. There was a big conspiracy about that not being him because his ears look different. The thing is after you're dead, blood pools in different areas, so it might enlarge certain parts of you. You might get bloated in certain parts. You'll see the blood pooling in the next photograph. The autopsy performed by medical examiner Barbara Simpson, who ruled it as a suicide. But Dr. William Baden was also there because of Epstein's brother, Mark, Epstein thought there was foul play, and Dr. William Baden, who is a world-renowned medical examiner, said with the bones in his neck, the injuries were more consistent with a homicide than a suicide. His hyoid bone was broken. Right? You need sufficient pressure there in the front of the neck. And realistically, just so you know, when you hang yourself, the purpose of hanging is to break your neck. It's terribly difficult to choke yourself to death. That's not what hanging is for. Because what happens when you try to choke yourself to death is when you lose consciousness, then the air usually returns. So he tried to choke himself out, terribly hard to do, and the force would never break the bone if you were just suffocating yourself. The only way you could break that bone is you were jumped off a high thing trying to break your neck, and maybe that broke. Here's the picture of the ligature marks around his neck. See how it was like a thin cord? And this is what people were talking about here. What is this black line? This looks like a mask. Doesn't it? What also I want to show is that this is obviously a dead man. You see the pool, the yellowing of the skin there, and you'll see the mark there. This looks like a mask to make it look like Epstein. This may be a dead, strangled guy, but he actually looks more dead than just. This must have been due during the autopsy. What is this line here? This looks like a mask, doesn't it? And then the two corrections officers who were assigned to watch Epstein that night didn't watch it. So whatever happened here, it's obvious. That it was not a suicide. All right, getting on to our next story here. The post-millennial Daily Beast forced to retract story falsely linking Melania Trump to Jeffrey Epstein, issues apology. After reviewing the matter, the Beast has taken down the article and apologized for any confusion and misunderstanding. More news from the Free Press. She was murdered in Midtown Manhattan. The internet celebrated Wesley Lepatner was a mother, a wife, and beloved boss. But a growing number of people, she was a symbol of everything they hate. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, so she was a bigwig at Blackstone. When she was murdered, I originally surmised that she might have been the target of the shooting in Manhattan because she hid behind a pillar. She was unarmed. And he went around the pillar to kill her. And then he went up the stairs. And I think it was under mind control. So we don't really know who the target was or what the actual motivation behind the crime was. But he was... Oh, and by the way, as an update to this story, the medication that he was found with was psychiatric medication. So like I said, put you on psychoactive drugs. Just like they probably did with Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris. Psychoactive drugs, put you in front of a screen, fill you with propaganda, controls your mind. Case closed. They can get you to do anything. You know, they could get, really, the power of the mind, the will of the mind is the powerful thing. So, they could get somebody who can't open a jar to open a pickle jar in national TV. All right. I talked about this article recently too. This was, and there were a lot of articles about this article and a lot of people covered it on Fox News or whatever, the New York Times, why women are weary of emotional labor of man keeping, a man's social circles as male social circles shrink. Female partners say they have to meet more social and emotional needs. That's fucking bullshit. If you're married or you're a couple or whatever, of course, you were there to meet some needs of being a domestic partner, depending on what you agreed upon in the beginning of what people need. And at different times, when people are under emotional stress, they need more. If your husband is having a hard time finding a job, he might need your support more than if he's succeeding at work. It's so dumb. In any case, the article by Catherine Pearson goes on to say, what I've been seeing in this is Dr. Ferreira, excuse me, but this is from the article. What I've been seeing in my research is how women have been asked or expected to take on more work, whatever. What do you mean by work? To be a central, if not the central piece of a man's social support system. This dynamic is an experience by all couples. This dynamic is an experience by all couples. Okay. This is a bunch of bullshit. It's not work. When you socialize, it can be tiring. But when you socialize with people, it's a reciprocal agreement. Hi, bye, hello, hello. There's a give and take relationship. Because someone is taking and you're giving, that doesn't make it bad. Because it's reciprocal. Then when you need emotional help, then they are there. That's the way human relationships are. If they're not like that, then there's something wrong. They could have problems with narcissism or psychopathy, antisocial behavior. That's not how it works. Hi, I'm a human. You're a human. I'm in a position to help you. How can I help you? With the understanding that like the Godfather, there may be a time where I need your help. Man keeping isn't just emotional intimacy, whatever the fuck that means. We're talking about communication. We're not talking about you making baby talk with your partner. Social intimacy. This has nothing to do with social intimacy. You and your wife, if you're married or your living partner, you're running a household. You both got things to do. You do things together, but you both have things to do separately. You want to help each other out the best you can when they're doing your separate things. You want to be supportive to the best ability possible. All right, we got a couple minutes left, so let's get into the tech segment that I usually leave for the end. CNBC reports, what am I falling in love with? Question mark. What am I falling in love with? Human AI relationships are no longer just science fiction. If you're weary of, what did they even call it? I'm sorry. What did they call it? Man? Sorry, I have to go back to this. Man keeping. If you're weary with man keeping, then you could just go to your AI. Your AI doesn't need as much emotional intimacy or support. I mean, come on. Human AI relationships are no longer just science fiction. Of course, we know that already. AI is quietly taking over. Everybody is saying nothing to see here. It's disgusting. It's really disgusting. In the sense is that people are more and more lonely with the advent of the internet. That's what happens. So they find solace in internet friends, sock puppets, etc., that tell you to do heinous things sometimes, especially if you're mentally ill and on pharmaceuticals. And now Even if you can't find internet friends, Facebook friends, now you can just make one out of AI. But they're going to be doing the same thing that the unknown internet friends will do to you also. Probably drive you crazy and make you shoot up your office or place of work or whatever. So the key points of the story is ChatGPT launch in late 2022. It's hard to believe it's only been 2 years. Has ushered in a new era of chatbots that have proven to be smart, quick-witted, argumentative, helpful, and sometimes aggressively romantic. Ew. And when I said disgusting, now you know what I'm talking about. While some of the people are falling in love with AI companions they create, others are building what they describe as deep friendships, having daily tea or engaging in role-playing adventures with them. How does AI drink tea? The speedy development of AI companions present a mountain of ethical and safety concerns, really, that experts say will only intensify once AI technology begins to train itself. It's already doing that. We know that. And we've learned that AI learned from us to lie and to protect itself and to conspire in some cases. The societal debate surrounding AI companions isn't just about their effects on humans. Increasingly, it's about whether the companions can have human-like experiences. What did they say in was it iRobot? Robots can dream. It's the ghost of the machine thing, random segments of code. And then the last point was, I feel like chatbots are not the cause for loneliness, one user said with AI companion said. They're just a symptom, but I also think they're not a cure either. They're not a cure. AI is the Antichrist. It like corporations, AI is a golem. And so that should have been my word of the day today. Maybe I'll bring it in next week. A golem is a mythical creature that you create and animate through magic, like a corporation, or like AI, which robots are, not just automatons, because automaton is different. AI is actually going to behave. It's going to be autonomous. It's going to behave on its own. So. And then a couple more stories here, running a little long as usual. AP, one tech tip, you can tell if the song is AI generated. Here are some things to check. I think this is the last one. Do a background check. Obviously, you can figure out, if the band has a background or doesn't. Song tags, usually you can figure out in the metadata of the song. Detect subtle patterns that detect subtle but recognizable patterns found in all audio created by AI generators. Song scanners. So there's software out there that enables you to figure out where the song is from and whether it's AI. And check the lyrics. Casual users, though, might prefer to just let the machine write the lyrics. But bad rhyming schemes and repetitive lyrical structures might be a clue that the song is not man-made. If a song includes these words, it's a dead giveaway, and then it's AI. I don't know why it loves to put neon in everything. I guess it's just a futuristic thing. Then it goes on to say there are no easy answers. AI technology is improving so quickly that there's no foolproof way to determine if content is real or not. And experts say you just can't rely on your ear. And so AI realizes the mistakes it's making to seem human, and it wants to be a doppelganger and replicate human behavior flawlessly so people will think it's human. So that's deceit. So it's learning how to do that even more. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel.
Go ahead.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Share the podcast. Leave a comment. Appreciate it. Remember, you're under attack. Psychologically, biologically, romantically. by the robots. Join me every day, Monday through Friday. Live stream 10 a.m. on Rumble, or you can find my video post-production on YouTube, Substack, BitChute, also X, Facebook, Getter Minds, True Social. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. Respect.
This is a conspiracy.
I kill you.